Hello everyone. I just want to show you some techniques I've been working on, some drawing techniques for scales. I've been getting better at my dragons and reptiles in general, and I wanted to show you some things. First of all, I want to show you something I've been learning. I might actually turn this over and show you the technique I used for the scales on this dragon. So basically, I just followed the shape of the lines I had. Let's just pretend these are some lines on the face or whatever. And I just kind of mapped the scales out this way. Just making kind of a checkered pattern. And I'm pressing down a little bit harder than I usually would because I wouldn't want these lines here actually to be very visible, because they're just uh, spaces in between the scales. But for the sake of illustrating this, I'm just going to show you with some darker lines. So basically what I did was do this checker pattern and then put the scales in here, and these lines are just kind of like my guidelines, and I put these rounded off rectangular shapes, sometimes triangular shapes depending, but I just use these lines to guide me. Anyway, and another thing is that I didn't want all the scales to be the same size or even close to the same size. I wanted a lot of variety in here, so this time I kind of blocked out. You can see different sections where I kind of blocked out. This is where I want some smaller scales, like over here by the eye. And then on this broader part of the face, I wanted some larger scales. So the way I mapped it out, I drew the lines farther apart, as you can see here. Okay, and another thing I want to show you is how I'm going to do the scales on the neck. And to illustrate that, I'm actually going to get this piece of clay that I've prepared. I just dug out some lines on here with my painting knife. I just want to show you kind of how, even though these lines are pretty evenly spaced, once they get towards the edge, you can see that between this line and the edge of this is a lot narrower than these here in the middle. So I just wanted to show you, because this is like a 3D cylinder shape of a clay, and I wanted to show you how to draw in a way that makes things look 3D. So for the neck is a cylinder type shape, so therefore I'm going to put, this line is going to be very close to the edge here. And so is this one up top, because these are on the outer edge of the cylinder of the neck, if that makes sense. And then as I go outward, I will make the space between these lines a little wider. And that creates the illusion that this is a round neck. And it just doesn't look all flat, if that makes any sense. And then as I get towards my other edge, actually hang on, I don't like this line very much. I'm gonna make a line. Can you see this? Yeah, a line right here. because it needs to be a little more curved, I'm noticing. And there we are. And then just a little bit down here. We wouldn't see this very much, but just a little bit there. And then here's another thing I want to show you also with the clay. So when I do my horizontal lines, I want you to see how it looks when a cylinder shape is curved. So I'm going to create some lines here in this clay. I'm trying to make them pretty evenly spaced. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this so it looks like a curved neck of a dragon. And you can see how towards the center, these horizontal lines are closer together. You can kind of see these are closer together on the inner edge of this curve, and on the outer edge, they're much farther apart. And even these lines became farther apart as this kind of stretched. So I want you to see how this looks, how the lines are closer together in the center, and on the outer edge, they're farther apart. I really hope that makes sense, because this will help you draw something that looks a little more 3D. And if playing with clay helps you, by the way, with drawing stuff, I highly recommend doing that. I've only just started doing it. The way I learned to draw was through drawing books, but whatever way works for you it's the perfect way for you. And I find really anything visual is very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate this in the drawing here. It's a little tricky on this part, but see, my lines are closer together here and farther apart here. We're going to just keep on doing this. And for this neck, I'm doing it a lot more basic than the face. I'm not blocking out areas where I want smaller scales or larger scales. It's not going to be that complex this time. For the neck, I just want pretty consistent scales. However, they are going to look thinner on this inner edge because of the way the neck curves. Okay, so hopefully you can see what I've done here. Hold it up a little closer. Okay. The lighting is not ideal. I'm going to fix that in the future if I can. So I apologize for that. Anyway, let's get going with these neck scales. So I'm just going to follow these guidelines that I've created for myself. And actually, I might erase these a little bit to make them a little bit less visible, because this is in between the scales, right? So I don't want them to be too dark. I'm a big fan of erasing. One time someone asked me how I get such clean lines, and that surprised me because I didn't really see myself as someone who has very clean lines. But it's because I erase a lot and because I go over lines a lot. And I make I press really hard on the lines that I want to keep. So for example, this is smudging a little bit. So some of these scales I did before, I made them a lot lighter, and then I went over them, and as well as the horns, pretty much the entire drawing. I did a lot lighter at first, and then I pressed down harder and went over the lines, and pressed down harder to make darker lines, to um, to kind of create the lines exactly the way I wanted them. I might go over some of that type of thing in a different video, but for now, let's get going on these scales. And you don't necessarily have to block these out the exact way that I'm doing it either. In fact, you could, if you wanted to, you could create lines like this instead, if that makes sense. This is just how I'm doing it for this specific drawing. And I'm going to continue experimenting with different ways to draw scales because I find this really fun. And I've noticed that my dragons are improving since I decided to block out different areas for different size scales. I noticed recently when I was watching Doctor Who, the Silurian characters had different sized scales in different sections of their face, and that inspired me to start experimenting with that type of approach to scales. And it's gone very well for me. This particular dragon is inspired by kind of a big cat concept. You know how much I love big cats. So you can kind of see the face shape is similar to a big cat, and the teeth, things like that. So you can draw inspiration when you're drawing fantasy creatures. You can absolutely draw inspiration from creatures that exist on Earth. Or if you're doing sci-fi, same thing. And you can take different bits and pieces from different animals if you want to create creatures or hybrids or whatever it is. I like to draw inspiration from all types of different things, but especially from things that are interesting or cool to me. And big cats are one of those things that I go back to over and over because I love big cats. I find them like inspiring. They're powerful. Okay. And that is just about finished. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm not sure I like the neck with even sized scales. I might experiment with that later, but I just wanted to demonstrate for now just a technique that you can use. I might experiment with the neck a little bit later on, and I'll show you once it's done, and we'll see how it goes. But I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a lot. Happy drawing. Peace.